Hoi! The devs took to Discord today to answer a variety of questions in multiple batches. There were first some answers by Fen, and then there were answers by Zin Ramu as well. And they talked about various upcoming plans for the game that I want to discuss here. We're gonna start with the PvE stuff. Me asked, are there any chances for solo dungeons, etc., so you can play the game fully alone? And Zin Ramu answered, there are no plans for solo expeditions at the moment. Those experiences are built for multiple players and designed with support and tank classes in mind. However, we want to make sure everyone can easily participate in expeditions, so we're making some changes in Season 3 to the difficulty of base expeditions to make them easy for all. We want players to be able to experience the fun and story of our expeditions in a low pressure setting. If players want a challenge, they can participate in mutators. Also, as you can see on the roadmap, we want to take expeditions cross-world, like we recently did with OPR. That should make it much easier to find others to play with you. Now, this is very interesting insofar that they're specifically mentioning changes to expeditions in Season 3 here. We know that they have been planning a mutator rework for ages and ages. It was announced, I think, last year even. And then they kind of stopped telling us anything about it. It sounds like they're doing something pretty significant to mutations here, or at least to the baseline, base expeditions, and then scaling the mutations up in difficulty. Now, I'm wondering what that will mean for, especially in the high-end difficulty, if that will be similar to the current M10, or if there will be something harder than that maybe, or if there's even going to be an M10, because a lot of people have been saying that 10 stages are too many. So yeah, it sounds like there's definitely something in the works here, and I'm hoping that this may be actually the full mutator rework along with the base difficulty changes. I think making the base difficulty more accessible is definitely a good idea though. Jake L asked a variety of questions. The first one was how invasions are now that they have been adjusted, if they're happy with the new difficulty level, how many are lost and so on. Then also that Hale and Hearty and Starwood were removed as town buffs, but Starwood was not added as a passive buff, if that's intentional, and if there will be any API that we can use in any form. For the first question, Zinramu responded, our main goal with the invasion changes were to speed up the experience and create a smoother difficulty curve. We were pretty happy with the ending waves, though this mostly resulted in earlier waves becoming a bit harder. This has resulted in a dip of win rates. They dipped a bit farther than we had anticipated, especially on fresh start worlds. Win rates are starting to increase a bit as people are learning the new setups. We'll be keeping an eye on win rate, and if this trend doesn't continue, we may need to make further changes. I'm very surprised. I felt like the changes were not really that significant, but then again, I feel like a lot of invasions are more so lost due to players maybe not being able to fill a roster in the first place. So not quite sure what's going on here, but I was hoping for a more significant invasion rework that I think would make it more appealing to more players, and then I would think that more invasions would be won because more involved PvE players would be interested in them in the first place. Regarding the second question, an inherent buff for Stalwart was not added. This was intentional. Overall, we feel Stamina Regen was in a good place without it and prefer the way the game plays without it. I completely understand that and agree with that. I think Stamina Regen was well above the threshold that it should have been, so nerfing that a little bit here, in my opinion, is not bad. I didn't even fully realize this, by the way. I wasn't even aware that Stalwart is just completely gone. I thought they actually just added it passively. They said they have no plans at the moment for APIs like this. Godliest asked if there will be a change to the leaderboards for the Sandworm. Right now it feels less like a skill competition and more like a competition on who's got the most free time. So I'd like to have score or time as options for the leaderboard, which I really would prefer as well. I think the current version is the most annoying one possible, and that's the case for many leaderboards actually. Fan response here on behalf of 17th Century Cable Guy, saying we can't fit 20 people in a leaderboard at the moment, but as we look at future raid content, we will look at improving these leaderboards as well. I'm hoping that doesn't necessarily apply to the rewards from this season as well, because I think those should be at least for the top 20 people, because then at least the top raid would get it. But either way, the leaderboards for this are just extremely frustrating in general, so it's very unfortunate they're not able to fix that quicker. GT asked, is the Ultimate Combat Trophy permanent, or are trophy Banes, or Bane trophies rather, going to go away along with the Banes and Wards gear at the end or by the end of 2023? Zenramu said there are no plans to remove trophies when we remove Ward and Banes. Trophies are a one-time acquisition versus gear which you continuously update and change. Likewise, trophies are a separate system, whereas Bane and Wards impacted options and choices on gear and replaced them with required perks. Lastly, I think they are sort of cool chaser items for that last bit of power. So this is very interesting, right? If you don't have your major Bane trophies yet, then these could become a little bit more valuable in this regard, because you will now need them for high-end expeditions likely if you want to do maximum damage. Sure, you did that before, but now it's a bigger factor compared to then likely, again, unless the coatings get massively buffed, because you don't really have your Bane weapons or ward gear, so there's less factors that can influence the impact on expeditions. Thelema asked if there are any plans of separating PvE balance from PvP, like when you flag for PvP, or in a PvP instance like OPR, so abilities and values would be different from when you're not flagged. Zenramu said, yes, this is something we've discussed in the past, and we think it is important so we can push for exciting and strong PvE experiences without breaking the balance of PvP. The first part of it will be coming in Season 3, when we use this new system to replace some of the balance we achieved through required perks. We will then build upon this system over time to include more aspects of combat. So this is very interesting because this makes it sound like the Ward and Bane removal may be coming with Season 3, something that I already speculated based on the resilient or the non-resilient items that we are getting at the moment. And that would be pretty cool. It would be good if this was coming with the expansion itself. So I like the sound of this when the required perks get removed in Season 3. So when Ward gets removed in Season 3, I would assume that's what's implied here. They hadn't confirmed that yet, so maybe we don't have to wait until the end of the year. And now we're moving from the PvE stuff to the PvP stuff. The last question was kind of both. Nebras5 asked if we can get a ready up feature in Arena so the downtime is shorter when everyone is ready to fight. The answer was, interesting idea. I agree that this would be a good flow, but this isn't something we've discussed internally yet, so no plans to pursue it at the moment. Madness asked how mounts will be handled in open world PvP, what system will be in place so players don't just run away before the fight starts. Here we get a very extensive answer. 3 key elements to this one. If you're in combat state, indicated by the crossed swords on the health bar, you can't summon your mount. 2. Any damage from another player will dismount you if you're flagged, including ranged attacks. And 3. Summoning has a 2-second delay and any PvP damage will cancel the summon. We have a few knobs and dials to tune and have done so a few times over our own playtesting, so if we still feel like it's too easy to ride away from fights, we will retune. Our goal for mounts in PvP is that they don't interfere with fights as much as possible. I am very curious to see what this means for OPR, because it could be interesting there, insofar that you could ride between points as long as you're not getting attacked. Obviously, there could also be ranged players just tagging you off your mount, and that could be very frustrating, but it could lead to a very different meta in terms of rotation. Mr. Liu had a very long and detailed question. Essentially what it came down to is he wanted to know if there are any plans to revamp or remove the current war system in New World, especially due to the gold imbalance that it creates and the lack of access for many players to the system as a whole, and also that it would be limiting to the player number on a particular server due to basically not allowing mega servers in the current version of the game. First, the war system isn't the limiting factor on the number of players on a server, so no changes to the war system would affect that server concurrency limit. The server population number is primarily based on ideal player density for a good experience, which can actually degrade if there is too much player density. They've talked about this in the past, for example, in the amount of gatherable resources available. Secondly, we do agree that we want more players to have access to war, and we have ideas on how to address it, but nothing we are ready to share yet. On the rewards for territory ownership, we continue to look at them with an eye on better balancing, but in general we want territory ownership rewards to be in line with the difficult achievement of taking and holding territory on an open server. Samuel Jones said the gear sets were a great addition. Will we ever see the option to save our gear set along with the associated skill attributes and weapon trees so we can cycle seamlessly between different builds? I personally really want this as well, because it's one of the main reasons why I kind of hard focus on PvP or PvE most of the time, because switching is just incredibly inconvenient. The response was, we agree that this would be a great addition, but we don't have any current plans or timelines on when this might happen. I really hope sooner rather than later. I really think they should make this a high priority. Nate Does Live asked, is there a planned inventory storage overhaul coming? The storage shed system is very frustrating and annoying in terms of organization. I would love to see a full-blown banking storage system similar to RuneScape, in which we can have custom tabs and sections for all of various items. Fen said, we strongly agree with your point of view and are actively looking into it. I'm sure you can imagine there are technical constraints to work around. We are still exploring. There was also a second question regarding the same topic from Venomous, who asked, can you make music sheets salvageable, because this may actually be affecting the server memory. Here the response was, we are currently looking at the amount of items in the inventory with an eye and strong desire to streamline them across the board. Music sheets are a great example of where the inventory can get bloated, but we don't yet have any concrete plans to share on how inventory items will be streamlined, including the music sheets. Overall, it definitely sounds like inventory management should be a lot better in the future. Niosa asked, are open world housing, animal husbandry or farming any of the ideas you would like to see in the game in the future? We'd love to see all of those in the game, with the exception of open world housing. There's good things about it, obviously, but our experiences from the early years have shown us that it's not always desirable to need physical space in the world to accommodate every player. We feel our current housing solution using faced house interiors strikes a really good balance between settlements feeling like living neighborhoods but without needing to introduce urban sprawl to a turn-up. Now, I think this can be interpreted in different ways. I think the open world housing doesn't necessarily mean what the interpretation was here. You don't necessarily have to have open world housing where anyone can just build their own house wherever they like and take off that space. It could just be dedicated specific houses. I know that a lot of people want that. So that instead of your city house, you have a specific house that you can buy somewhere outside of town, somewhere in the open world, maybe with a little farm around it or something, and that players can use that is the same instance system that other houses also use. So there are other solutions to that, which I think may have been the suggestion here. I don't really see how animal husbandry or farming, so like raising animals on the farm or farming itself, would work really well as long as they're sticking to city housing, because city housing doesn't really make much sense for that comparatively. There's also a quick hotfix today that comes with some important changes. The Yas song can now be played again and you can get the rewards again, and it's not just on the Summer Village stage. You can actually not play it there at the moment for some reason, and you can get the reward wherever you are. So you can only play it 3 times now. There's a cap on that now, but you can get the loot finally. The Guitar Hero achievement should now also be working when getting a perfect score on Ya. The Bloodfisher challenge has also been re-enabled. Let's hope it actually works now. And the quest, The Virtual's Truth, should now be working for players, hopefully, which kind of blocked progress for some people. So overall, a lot of good announcements, a lot of good changes that were introduced today. And tomorrow, I should hopefully be able to finish the Sandworm guide. If you'd like to see that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you get notified. If you want to support me further, you can do so on Patreon. Thanks to my patrons who already do exactly that. Thank you for watching. Sloth out.